Hey guys, welcome to Whiskey and Literature. I'm your host, Captain Mike, and I know what you're thinking when you see this bottle, and you're correct. This is my third Amburana finished bourbon video in a row. I've done the Penelope Rio and the Barrell Bourbon Amburana finished, and I thought I'd just round out my Amburana experience here with the RD1. RD1 from Lexington, Kentucky. They don't distill their own whiskey, but they source it from Kentucky Western Distilling. And I just read it, they're gonna open their own distilling this year, and I was like, whoa, great for them. And then I read a little deeper, and they're only expected to distill 1 barrel of whiskey per week from that still for research purposes. So, oh well, it's probably be for visitors and stuff to be able to see it there, I imagine. But it's more just for research, and they're gonna keep sourcing their whiskey from Kentucky Western Distilling. I had heard great things about RD1, so last time I was out in Kentucky, I picked up a bottle because I hadn't been able to find any RD1 here in the Bay. And then what happens, as soon as I get home from Kentucky with my French oak aged RD1, I saw in a couple of different stores RD1 on the shelves. And that's the story of my life. I feel like I go to Kentucky, I find bottles there that I haven't seen here locally, and then when I get home in a couple of weeks, I see those same bottles. And I'm like, why did I go to Kentucky and then transport those bottles all the way back home? But it is what it is, and I'm excited about having this bottle and the French oak RD1 in the house. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna review the RD1, and maybe I should have done all 3 of these whiskeys at one time anyway, but I'm gonna have this video be kind of split, and I'll use chapter tools to kind of split it right in the middle, because I'm gonna review this here independently, like I've done for the other 2 Amburana finished, and then after I do that, I'm just gonna go on and go with comparison between these 3 bottles, and just let you know which one I like and appreciate the most. But anyway, specs and stats on the RD1, and then let's get it. Again, this is sourced whiskey. It is a small batch, and it's 70% corn, 21% rye, and 9% malted barley. It's non-chill filtered. It's at least 4 years old. And the website says the finish in the Amburana cask, or the Amburana finish, was an unspecified amount of time. This was bottled at a nice 110 proof. I paid $69.99 for this at Total Wine. And I'll go ahead and put up a picture from the RD1 website to show you the kind of stave that they used to finish this whiskey. They didn't finish it in full 53-gallon barrels. What they did is they took their bourbon and they staved it. And these staves were a little unusual. I've never seen anything like this. If you have, let us know. But I've never seen, they took the staves and they drilled holes in them, as in, looked like a honeycomb. And that just allowed more of the Amburana wood to contact the bourbon. So I think that just helped to finish more quickly. And that is a difference between this RD1 and the Penelope and the Barrell Craft. I believe both of these were finished in just full 53-gallon barrels. Okay, I had a little pour of this last night, and let's go through it here again tonight. This is the RD1 Amburana finished. And I was prepared not to like this as much as I enjoyed the Barrell Craft spirits, because I thought, it's kind of gimmicky. They're using these staves instead of them putting them in full barrels. It doesn't have as high a proof as the Barrell Craft spirits. It's not as old. This is at least 4 years old, so I guess we don't know. But the Barrell Craft spirits is cask strength, and I don't know why I'm going through all this stuff now. I was going to go through it later. But the Barrell Craft spirits also is cask strength. So I was expecting not to like this as much, but I tell you what, it kind of blew my socks off last night. And I haven't had any whiskey yet tonight, so I usually try and have a little sip before I start, because sometimes on your first sip of the day, it's just kind of overwhelming. In fact, let's take a sip first and then get to the nose. Cheers. Wow. It's an overpowering initial sip. Again, it's my first sip of whiskey today. Not bad, 8:30 at night. I'm a little tired. We went down to the beach today, spent a couple hours down there, and I was just, before I came in here, I was telling Mrs. Captain, I'm like, man, I got like a headache, just not feeling super great. And she's like, well, we spent a couple hours on the beach today, and that really wears you down. And it's true. It's out there in the sun, no umbrella. Man, it felt so good. That's a perfect Sunday for me. A couple beers on the beach. It's a nice time. Okay, RD1 Amburana. The nose is really nice. The Amburana, the typical notes that a lot of guys report on that is it's really heavy cinnamon, some tobacco and leather, kind of just small threads of that. And I'm not great at picking up tobacco and leather notes in whiskeys. I've only once or twice ever said I've picked up any kind of notes like that, and I haven't on any 3 of these whiskeys so far. But definitely heavy cinnamon. It's a nice nose. It's also relatively sweet. Man, it's just a big amount of cinnamon, a honey note, just sweetness, and that spice from the cinnamon. That's really what I'm getting. There's also almost an oak note, but not quite. But it's kind of woodsy, but not a wood that I'm familiar with. Again, I think that's just the Amburana, of course. It's just a kind of an underlying, kind of replacing that oakiness you get sometimes in a whiskey. I think it's a really nice nose. I enjoy it. It's not overwhelmingly sweet and cloying, but it's a nice amount of richness and sweetness on the nose. It's a nice first impression. Again, it's going in for the sip now. Man, it's not a whole lot less potent on that second sip than it was on the first. And my mouth is alive and it's on fire right now with this cinnamon spice, just this heat. I can feel the warmth just coming down through here. It is a nice sip. 110 proof, I think that is a fantastic proof. It's higher than the Penelope, lower than the Barrell Bourbon. And I think it's a really, really nice proof point, and it shines through right now. It gives a richness to the pour. It's just an explosion of cinnamon, spices. You know, we had this last night, and I was kind of thinking, maybe it's kind of like that first bite of like an apple pie from McDonald's, that heavy cinnamon, cinnamon toast crunch kind of notes in there. Just think of that, right? Some graham crackers, cinnamon, and some more cinnamon, a touch of honey, and it's just fire. It's really nice. It's rich and it's viscous and it's lingering just a bit. And I'm really enjoying this first sip tonight of this again. I felt like on that, as I was going into sip, I got a big nostril full of like a raisiny note. And I really haven't picked it up on the palate yet. It's still more just overwhelming heat, cinnamon, some spice, the honey graham crackers, cinnamon toast crunch, however you want to describe it. It's good. It's not, anyway, we'll get to the other 2 whiskey. I keep wanting to compare this to these 2 already, but let's just talk about this on its own. Okay, so now, as I'm just letting it kind of marinate in there and it's finishing, it's a nice lingering finish. My mouth is still slightly not on fire, but just some nice spice going on in there. Nice lingering notes. Again, those cinnamon, there's some honey notes, and I think even that raisin that I got on the nose, which I didn't really get initially on the palate. As it's finishing, I'm getting those raisin notes. So think of like a cinnamon roll with raisins. I used to work at a bakery when I was in high school where I met Mrs. Captain quite a while ago. And Mr. Lynn, he made cinnamon rolls, and they were huge. And man, I love those cinnamon rolls, just that rich caramel and the sweetness and the raisins. That's kind of what I'm getting here as it's finishing. It's a really nice finish, just the right amount of warmth. You can tell you're drinking a bourbon, and it's not so heavy on the Amburana that it overrides all these notes. And I think Amburana is kind of the fad these days, as kind of finishing whiskeys are. And I think this is a pretty good example of a finished whiskey. And for 69 bucks, the MSRP might be 64. I paid 69 yesterday for this, and I think that's a decent price. So I think if you are into something different, or you've had an Amburana and you're not so sure on it, and you want to get a different opinion or try something different, because these three that I've had so far, they're all fairly different with the notes and the nose and the palate and the finishing. They're all very different, and the price points fairly similar, but I think this is a decent one. RD1, I don't know how available it is in the area. Like I said, I couldn't find any RD1 until I finally saw it on the shelves just a couple of months ago. And so I don't know how available it is in all of the areas. Again, here in the Tampa Bay, it just hasn't been that available. But I think it's a solid pour. It's a solid proof. It's a decent price. And if you want to experiment and try something a little different, I think this RD1 is a decent way to go. Well, let's do a pour of these three here. And now we're just gonna shift gears and kind of talk about all three of these. Just a brief rundown on the spec stats, and then my first impressions, and then do I have a preference for them. Well, I have them here in price order. That's an accident here, but $69.99, $79.99, and $89.99. At least that's what I paid for it. I can't tell you exactly MSRPs, but that's what I paid for it. And Total Wine, and not Total Wine, a different kind of a bigger local chain here in the Tampa Bay area. This is finished in a full Amburana cask, This is staved, different mash bills, different cask. This is 98 proof, 116 and change, 110. This was also finished, this double finished in the Penelope Rio in Amburana and honey. So it has that different twist to it. My experience with the Penelope Rio is that it's almost heavy-handed. It's not subtle at all. It's just like, here I am, here's this honey, here's this Amburana, and you can kind of find a bourbon in there a little bit. The Barrell bourbon, I feel like it is great and is rich. It's much more subtle than the Rio with the Amburana. You just look at those bourbon notes. It's got a great texture and richness thanks to the proof and a little bit of age with the 5 years. I think this is a solid example of an Amburana finished bourbon that's not overbearingly Amburana. RD1, 110 proof. It has a nice mouthfeel texture. It's a little more heavy-handed with the cinnamon and whatnot than the Barrell bourbon one. So I think of these three, if you're kind of, oh, I don't know about the Amburana finish, or I've heard it's super aggressive, Barrell bourbon I would think would be probably the most pleasing. I think everything about it is really great. The RD1 would be the next level, just a little heavier on the cinnamon and the heat even a bit, even though it's less proof. And this is just, I feel like the Penelope Rio is an awesome whiskey. I really enjoyed this pour, but I could see how if you have too much of this too quickly or too soon, it's just, you reach a saturation point and it's just not great anymore. I mean, this is a really nice nose. It's just so different, just overwhelmingly honey. They got that cinnamon nose in there. Man, it is a great nose, but I can see how this guy, you can either love it or you hate it. This reminds me of the absent finished rye from Peerless and the Liche finished Whistle Pig Piggyback. Those are both, I think, great, but they are very heavy-handed on the finish. And some guys like that. I mean, we really like that absent finish and the Liche, and we like the Rio. It's just, man, if you're not into finished whiskeys, this is definitely not going to be your jam. But honestly, man, so much honey, so much Amburana and cinnamon spice, raisin, rum, caramel. It's it's a dessert in a bottle. It is great, but I don't want to have this again for weeks and weeks and weeks because it's just too much. The Barrell bourbon, man, I really enjoyed this. I think it is a fantastic whiskey. And I know I'm not rinsing my mouth out here between the pours. I'm just doing this really fast to give you, I think, already the information that I've had, but I'm just having a nice little pour of each of these before I call it a night. What a great whiskey. I really enjoy this one. It's just, again, more subtle, and it is alive with that spice and the cinnamon and the heat and the richness. Bam, all day, every day. Definitely more, you could have more of this because the finish is more subtle. I think that is a fantastic whiskey. And the RD1, again, I think is really nice. Man, my mouth is just, it's just alive with this cinnamon and honey and everything. I'm getting kind of overwhelmed here by these whiskeys, but man, it's crazy how different these are. So if you tell me you don't like Amburana, I get it. I understand. I'm not trying to force you or say you should buy Amburana because it's awesome. But if you like something different, want to try something new, and you have the coin, you disposable income, I think you should pick one of these up and give them a go. I'm happy to have them on my shelf, and I'm happy to return to them later. And I know I have some friends and Mrs. Captain who really like these whiskeys, and so I think they're great to have on the shelf as something a little different and just a little different path on the whiskey road. So how about you guys? I know there's some other Amburana finished whiskeys out there. I was reading today about a few, and you know what? I'm gonna stick with these three for now. If you have a favorite one, feel free to comment below, and maybe someone will see that comment and go pick up a different bottle. And maybe down the road, when I empty one of these bottles, I look for maybe I'll always keep 3 in here, and I'll try something a little different after one of these are empty. So if you have a favorite, let us know. I'm interested in that. Or if you're like, you know what, I don't like finished whiskeys, and I've had a few comments on my channel, I don't like Amburana, and I get it. I've had some finished whiskeys that I'm like, don't really like that one, and so no big deal, right? You like what you like. Don't yuck my yum. All right, my guys, I appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it, subscribe to see more of my content. Again, I do both whiskey and book videos. But for now, you know what to do. I hope you're reading something good and drinking something great. Turn the pages, my friends, and stay thirsty. Cheers.